afternoon, everyone, and welcome to What the Why, one of RVN Television's newer shows. If you're joining us for the first time, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured out that this is what they're meant to do in life, at least at this point in time. So whether you yourself are tired of feeling stuck and want to get unstuck, or maybe you are just sick and tired of being sick and tired, this show is definitely for you. This is the first time that we actually have two guests joining us today, and we've been promoting them for a little bit now. We have with us, excuse me one second, Sergeant Brett D'Alessandro and Alexis Modero, the team who runs Backpacks for Life. When Sergeant Brett D'Alessandro returned home from a 7-month deployment in Afghanistan to what he thought was the end of a long road, what he quickly learned was that an even longer road filled with struggle and confusion lay ahead. That road would eventually lead him and his fiancée Alexa to form the nonprofit organization Backpacks for Life. Since 2014, Backpacks for Life has been dedicated to serving homeless and at-risk veterans through backpack distribution and a mentorship program. The Backpack for Life team works one-on-one with veterans to help them find the right supportive services for their situation. The process is aided by countless hours of personal interaction and the physical distribution of backpacks. And these aren't just any type of backpack, and you'll be seeing one shortly. Alexa serves as executive director of Backpacks for Life. In addition, because so many people these days have multiple careers, she serves as the director of the NYU Tandon Veterans Future Lab and vice president of operations for the United States Manufacturing Company, and she holds a BS, or Bachelor of Science in Public Relations, cum laude, for those of you who don't speak Latin, with honors from University of Rhode Island. And Sergeant Brett D'Alessandro, who I will be referring to as Brett throughout, is a retiree, although once a Marine, always a Marine, of the U.S. Marine Corps. He's the founder of Backpack for Life and the vice president of sales for the United States Manufacturing Company. He's also the founder and patent holder for something called Pocket Tack, which I want to learn a little bit more about, and he studied political science at the University of Rhode Island. Both volunteer in far too many organizations and initiatives to list here. So without further ado, please welcome Brett and Alexa.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
So glad you're able to make it here. Our audience has no idea, but it's been an interesting day.
Yes.
Transportation all around in New Jersey is always fun. And let's jump right in. So one of the first questions I always ask every guest is, you've been on a long journey to this point in your life, but I don't know that you really thought this is where you were going to end up when you were little. So if each of you could just briefly tell me what you really wanted to do when you were a little person, when you grew up.
So this is something I'm sure a lot of little boys want to be, a baseball player. So that was definitely one of my big dreams. I was actually going to play baseball at Johnson & Wales, and last minute decided to join the Marine Corps, or enlist in the Marine Corps without my parents' knowledge. So they got a letter in the mail when they were thinking that I was going to go to Johnson & Wales to play baseball. Congratulations, with your son joining the Marines. So my parents were definitely taken back on that one.
Wow. And my son did something similar with the Army, although he decided to hold back from the pandemic. But yeah, we found out when he decided to do something similar. All of a sudden we're getting phone calls for things. I'm like, what? He did what? All right, and we're going to come back to the Marine Corps in a minute, but Alexa, what did you want to be when you grew up?
You know, I feel as though I haven't been asked that question in such a long time, but I think growing up I always liked performing, dancing, and cheering, and did all competitive sports, and I think I just saw myself doing something in a dance-related field, but I also just ended up, like you mentioned, getting into public relations, and even to this day, what we do today I would have never expected we'd end up here. But, you know, grew up thinking I'd be some type of performer in some capacity. So we're performing in a little bit of different of a way today.
I recall you saying you wanted to be a Dallas cheerleader.
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys cheerleader,
Yeah.
a backup dancer. I was, you know, thinking it was a little bit easier.
Well, my son that I've already mentioned is a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, so he would love that part too.
Right.
So it's too funny. I can hear it now. Why didn't you bring me to the interview? Because you're working. So you decide to go in the Marines, and how did the two of you meet?
So my, I guess, girlfriend at the time, when we were both going to University of Rhode Island, I was in the reserves in the Marine Corps, and she dumped me, and I came over to Lexa to use her, you know, her shoulder to cry on, and said, you know, who am I going to go with? And she's like, you can go with me. And I'm like, sounds like a plan. And
yeah, he bought 2 tickets to the Marine Corps ball and
Yeah.
said, look, I don't have a date. And I felt so bad. I said, I'll go with you.
So,
And, you know, as they
Was that
say,
pity?
the rest is history. But we had such a lovely time. And then I was in need of a date a few weeks later for my sorority formal. And, you know, then the crush began. And little did I know he would, you know, deploy to Afghanistan shortly after that. So it's been an interesting ride from the start.
our first year together, we were actually apart because she was studying in Seville, Spain, and I was over in Afghanistan. So that was an interesting first year relationship.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But obviously it worked.
It did, and I think we were fortunate, you know, this is back in 2013, but at that point technology had really been implemented in a great way in Afghanistan that we were fortunate to be able to use FaceTime and see each other digitally, you know, and that was the world. And we still wrote each other letters, but it was, you know, what time change and, you know, when he was out on a mission and I'm just hoping he gets back to his base and he's okay. So it was definitely an interesting first year to say the least.
And after your deployment, you come back, and things are not exactly as easy to come back to as they were before you left. So can you talk a little bit about some of those experiences, because those experiences are integral to how you're doing what you are today?
Yeah, and I associate with, for an example, that somebody could kind of really feel how I felt, but imagine going to another country with really no cell phone, no family, really nothing, just getting dumped into another country, and you're standing there and they don't speak English, and you're just sitting there like, what, you know? So it was kind of that feeling. Yes, we lost some Marines over there, and that was definitely challenging with my recovery. But it was a combination of things. It was that, you know, it was the biggest issue, but more so just lose my purpose. I really had this amazing job. I was helping people. I love to make a difference in somebody's life, and just really came back home. I saw my peers were a little farther advanced than I was, really didn't know what to do next, and it really put me in a slump.
Okay. How did you find the courage to pull yourself out of that slump?
I luckily had Alexa and my family and friends, so the courage wasn't through me. It was through my family and friends being there for me. And unfortunately, a lot of veterans don't have that family support system, so I was lucky.
They also don't necessarily have somebody that's going to stand by them when they're having mental health issues. So how did you find the courage to continue forward as this man that you went to the Marine Corps ball and fell in love with was dealing with the struggles of returning from active duty in Afghanistan?
Yeah, it was nothing I could have imagined. You know, you hear about these terms like PTSD and struggling to reacclimate, and it all just seemed like concepts until he was home and it was a real life experience. And I don't wish it on anyone, and especially for spouses. It's really hard to know what resources and programs are out there, and as someone who kind of got thrown in and didn't really feel like I was well equipped to support him in the beginning, and then it really, just to see him struggling, put me in overdrive. So I just started to learn about different programs and how I could just be there, because at the end of the day, you can't fully understand what they've experienced overseas. So I really just tried to be supportive without overstepping. But every day was a different journey. It was never the same day, and there were struggles that, you know, every veteran goes through, and every day to this day, mental health and working on yourself, it's a constant journey. So it was certainly a challenge and something I was not expecting, and at a young age. We were both in college, just about 20 when he left to deploy. So at such a young age, it was hard to feel educated to support him too.
And I'd just like to add, a lot of people think it's this veteran going through this journey, and it's not at all. It's the entire family. I always like to say, you know, if a house burns down, you don't build up one side of the house. You need to build up the entire house. So a lot of people, they unfortunately just focus on the veteran, and oh, the veteran's going through some struggles. And in reality, it's the family. I mean, you should see some of these veterans' kids that just really don't understand, and they just really, there becomes more distance between their child and them, and that just really doesn't help it doesn't help anybody out. So we really need to focus on the entire family.
And with all of the efforts out there today, so many of the resources are still very fragmented. And I know that you shared that you experienced some of that, and that contributed to one of the reasons why Backpack for Life was founded. You mentioned a particular incident. I don't know what level of comfort you have, but that you had an encounter with somebody in particular that you realized just talking to was integral. If you could share a little bit of that with the people who are watching today, who themselves may have served or have family that is currently serving or has served previously or could be called up at any given time.
So I was on medical hold when I got back from my deployment to Afghanistan, and it was January, February at the time, so very cold out in Rhode Island, and I was going to Newport Naval Base with one of my buddies who was also on medical hold, and we saw a gentleman with a sign, "Homeless vet, please help me out." So I was going through a lot, but I was like, I had this instinct, it's my brother in arms, I'm gonna help him out. So I went back to my hotel, got a backpack, filled it up with warmer layers, and went back out, gave it to the gentleman, a little small talk, nothing more, and 3 or 4 days go by, I see him again, and he was with a little boy this time. So I pulled over to the side of the road, and before I could get a word out, the little boy said, "Thank you so much for the backpack. I no longer have to go to school carrying my books in my hands." And Dad said, "Thank you so much for the warmer layers. They keep my wife, who's sick at the homeless shelter, warm." And I was like, this is my calling. I thought I was just this weak-minded Marine that really couldn't handle it. And to see that other veterans were also struggling, I was like, you know what? This is what I can continue to do. I want to continue to serve not just people in our country, but our veterans, and that's even more of an honor. So I called Alexa up. This is my first of many crazy ideas, and I was like, "Alexa, I just luckily found resources out there. That's really a big issue, is making sure we can mitigate that gap between the veteran and getting the resources and care that they deserve. So let's make sure that we can mitigate that step right there." And so we got some backpacks through a GoFundMe of raising some money. And these backpacks were like upgraded toilet paper. They were horrible backpacks, but we put supplies, toiletries, and resources in them. And again, it wasn't any of those things that mattered. It was about being there and knowing that these veterans saw somebody who genuinely cared about for them.
So, believe it or not, it's already time for a break. Time goes fast. It really does.
We could be here all day.
Really, and so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be back, because it didn't just stop with those few backpacks. It turned into so much more. So we'll be right back with Alexa and Brett after these commercial messages. Welcome back to What the Why, and our guests today are Brett and Alexa. And before we talk a little bit more about Backpacks for Life, a lot of viewers out there, and some of you actually may have experienced this personally, when you return as a vet and you've experienced some kind of trauma, it can actually be very difficult to re-engage in the employment arena because of perceptions around mental health, when mental health is such an issue in this country to begin with. So you were sharing during the break that you had some experiences. I know there's some ongoing stuff, so you can only share to a point, but to the point that you can talk about it. You applied for a position and blew through it with flying colors.
As a firefighter in Paterson, New Jersey, again, I wanted to dedicate my life to serving others, and lived in Paterson. I was number 3 on the written test. My roommate was number 1. We both went in as a disabled veteran because you get preference for that. And so I figured, that's a smart move. We got down to the psychological part, and they denied me because they said I was psychologically unfit to become a firefighter, even though I was able to deploy again to Afghanistan with a weapon, but I couldn't be a firefighter. And again, this isn't about me. This is about all these employers who are hesitant to hire a veteran, or more so a disabled veteran, because of them dealing with military sexual trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder or a traumatic brain injury. And it's just sad because these are people who literally would have risked their life for this country. And these people, yes, they are dealing with some issues, but it's nothing wrong. They're still very much capable of doing that task, and not just doing it, but outperforming that task. And again, PTSD isn't something that is with you, or it is with you for life, but it makes you stronger. It's not something that holds you down for life. And I'm proud that I'm a veteran with PTSD. There's nothing wrong with that, and nobody should be ashamed. And unfortunately, especially the civil service is not allowing these veterans a fair chance to get employment. So we ended up filing a lawsuit, and June 27th is the court date, and hopefully I can put a stop to people discriminating against veterans with PTSD.
Yeah, because there's a difference between mental health that's not being treated and mental health where people are doing the work and have support systems that have gone through it with them. It's a very different process. And
now because of this, veterans are fearful of getting help, and they're becoming part of that 22 veterans who are committed suicide a day statistic because they're fearful of getting help because they're going to be reprimanded for that help, which is just very sad, very, very sad. Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess the upside, though, is you're part of the solution, or at least helping people find their way to the solution. And so we were talking before the break about the backpacks that you started, but the backpacks are so much more now than just a backpack. So if you want to pull one out and explain to folks
we've come
what
a
makes
long
this so
way.
unique.
I'll be the Vanna White.
There you go.
Brett acts as the Vanna White here, but so this backpack we actually developed after years of using other brands' backpacks and working with homeless veterans and understanding what they truly needed to not only survive but get off the streets more quickly. So imagine you're a veteran and you are carrying all your personal belongings. This includes your driver's license, your birth certificate, all those important things that you don't want to lose. So we've actually implemented a locking cable here. So, whether they're in a shelter or on the streets, they could lock their bag off to a bedpost just to ensure that their most crucial assets are not being lost. Because if you lose all those items, you're back to square one. And we're all about continuing to help the momentum and keep that ball rolling to get them the support they need. Inside, there's also a collapsible sleep mat. So this actually is just a 1/4-inch cell foam mat, but this actually helps prevent hypothermia. So again, little things that we just really realized from listening to the veterans we serve. Reflective tape all throughout the backpack, so if they're out at night, they can be seen. A whistle clip they could blow, and it's pretty loud if we did blow it. But
for blowing that.
if they're in danger on the streets, the lid actually detaches. So that becomes a detachable toiletry kit. So if they're staying in a shelter, they could just grab their lid, go to the restroom to use it. So we really tried to think of all the ways to enhance their living, creating a belt loop there so they can put their belt right through that hole, cinch it to their waist. I mean, you have to realize this is their mobile home for our chronically homeless veterans. So, everyone is always asked, how did you come up with this? And we said, we listened to the people we served and what they truly needed. The material itself is the same material that goes into holding the SAPI plates in a bulletproof vest. So super durable, rugged, and really the bag itself is an ode to the military. It's a sea bag style closure. If anyone's a Navy veteran that's watching, they'll be familiar, that style. And it's carry-on size approved. We actually patented the pack as well. So, it's entrepreneurial meets really, really useful for our veterans.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, and it's theirs. And you're right, especially with the documentation. To try and replace all that documentation when you have no documentation is really difficult.
Right. How do you
It's-
identify yourself? And especially when you're working with someone who might be in a fragile state, dealing with mental health
Right.
concerns, perhaps drug and alcohol use, financial instability. So compounding all those things, it's almost like the perfect storm, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get a social security card without an ID? How do you get an ID without a social security card? Like, it's just like, it's extremely hard. I mean, you're going back 2 or 3 months backtrack, and if you lose that information, so it's very difficult. I always tell somebody, try to get help without using a phone. You're in your wallet. You know, it's difficult.
And so part of what you do in addition to this is helping the veterans that you encounter reach out and connect with different resources that are available to them that they may not be aware of, because so many of them are piecemeal. So what are some of the things that you've helped them do? Some of the organizations that you've matched them up with? You know, there's a misconception that, well, they can just go stay in a shelter. Well, no, not everybody wants to be in a shelter at any given time for whatever reason, and that is their right. And so what are some of the other services that you provide?
Yeah, so the backpack is really that first step, just to build camaraderie with the veteran, and then we want to help them beyond the backpack. So we have a coaching and mentorship program where we work one-on-one with veterans to provide personalized support. So whether they served in the Coast Guard or the Air Force, the way they were discharged from the military, it creates different, unfortunately, barriers to different programs they might be eligible for. So, you know, we work with great government programs, nonprofits, and even for-profits who have free offerings for veterans, but to navigate that process is the hardest part. So what we most recently did was created an online search platform for the New Jersey veteran community called Roger, which we coined off the term Roger That, keeping everything very military themed. And the website is roger.vet, and you can actually go online, input things like your income, your zip code, your branch of service, and it filters down. You know, you could select categories. So even if you're just looking for a recreational group and looking to be surrounded by other veterans, and it pairs down to show you results that qualify based on you as the individual veteran. So it's great for veterans to use, great for spouses and support systems, and also service providers. So, you know, we partner with groups such as shelters, fly fishing groups, art therapy groups, equine therapy. I mean, you wouldn't believe all the different outlets and avenues that veterans can really see a difference and get help in supporting them in their well-being.
And we have to get away from this, oh, resources, you know, I'm not in need of that. Well, you don't have to be suffering to access resources. You know, these things are about camaraderie, or having something fun to do, or even going to the vet center. People are like, oh, I don't need to go to the vet center. I'm not, you know, in trouble yet. That's exactly why you need to go to the vet center. You need to go there to prevent something from bad happening. It's all about preventative measures, and there's nothing wrong. It's like going to college to better yourself. You're going to these programs and resources to continue to better yourself. Mental health is a huge thing that you need to focus on, especially with entrepreneurship. You know, if you're going through that entrepreneurial hustle, you need to be mentally prepared.
Wow. Believe it or not, we are actually at the end. If one of our viewers out there wants to support your organization or connect to learn more for someone that they know or even for themselves, how is the best way to reach you?
So our website is backpacksforlife.org. You could also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Backpacks for Life. You'll see all the work we're doing out in the community, working with veterans. And you can always reach us online. You could sign up for our volunteer events, do some hands-on backpack packing. And yeah, we'd love to have more people be part of our community.
That would be great. Yeah, because what you're doing is critical.
Thank you.
So thank you so much on this crazy Monday for taking the time and coming on and showing everybody, you know, what you're doing, just the entryway into helping change lives for people who, you know, put theirs on the line to defend our country. So regarding future shows, next week we're going to have a flashback to Willow Creek Winery. I don't know why I keep tripping over that word. Willow Creek Winery in Cape May.
Say that 10 times
I know. So where it's interesting is this is going to be a little bit of a surprise show. We had an issue that day, and one of our guests wasn't able to join us, and You may recall a few weeks ago we had Maria O'Callahan Cassidy, who is the chair of Women in Facilities Management and the co-chair of the board of BOMA, Board of Buildings Operations Management Association. Anyway, we flipped the tables. She's known me for 30 plus years and she hates when I say that. And so who better to interview the host of What the Why than one of the ride or die friends, one of two, who was serving as a guest that day. So that episode will air the day after Memorial Day. The following week, you'll hear from Glenn LaRue Smith. He will actually be the guest who travels the farthest so far. He's going to be coming up from Washington, D.C. He's the co-founder and partner of Push Studio in Washington, D.C., which is an architectural landscape company. He's a member of the American Society of Landscape Architects, and recognizing the extreme lack of diversity in landscape architecture, he also founded the Black Landscape Architects Network and was recently acknowledged by the American Society of Landscape Architects for his work. He originally served as Black Landscape Architects Network president, where he now serves as an advisory council member because he just completed his term as a Mellon Fellow at the Dumbarton Oaks in Urban Landscape Studies, where he conducted research work on Black landscape architects. So suffice to say, you really do not want to miss out on any of our upcoming shows as our guests share their journeys about how they figured out what their why was. So, What the Why continues to air on typically Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. and the following Monday at 3:30 p.m. It's also available on demand through RVN Television and Roku. So whether you're looking to make changes in your life or career, big or small, please join us again for more inspirational and informative conversations with guests like Brett and Alexa. Thank you both for sharing your journey. And others who realized that they wanted to make a change in their life and overcame whatever obstacles or fears were in their path to make it happen and live it.